What's in a name? That which you call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So penny plant would, were he not penny plant called? Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are doing another how to care and propagate your houseplants. This time we're going to talk all about the Cissus Discolor and the silver dollar vine, two plants that I often get a lot of questions on my Instagram about. And you'll be happy to know that these plants aren't necessarily rare or expensive. They should be a little bit more available depending obviously on your location. I found my Cissus Discolor earlier this summer at a local convenience stores or bodega, and then my silver dollar vine at a boutique nursery shop about maybe 2 years ago. So both have been thriving under my care, and I'm happy to also share my experience with you guys. Both plants I find extremely unique because of the way they're structured. Let's start with the Cissus Discolor. Now this plant is native to the tropical rainforest islands of Java. They're known to have these beautiful large leaves that has great patterns and great colors blended together, shades of gray, purple, and green to it. The underside of the leaf has this burgundy and purple color, and it's such a cool looking plant, so unique. The texture of the leaf is somewhat raised and also has like a velvety feel to it. Now, it's often sometimes called a Rex begonia vine. However, it is actually not part of the begonia family. It is actually part of the grapevine family, and you guys can tell by the way the vines grow and they wrap around kind of neighboring trees and whatnot. So really cool looking plants. You can either have this climbing up on a trellis or a pole, or you can have it on top of a bookshelf. I have mine on top of this floating shelf that's cascading and trailing down this mirror, which I love the look of. However, I actually do plan on putting a trellis on this so it can climb and create kind of that backdrop and still have the vines trailing and draping over that mirror. So yeah, really cool plant. It's definitely one of my favorite vining plants lately. Now let's talk about the general care when it comes to your Cissus Discolor. You guys know I have a large south-facing window, floor to ceiling, unobstructed view. So I get a lot of natural bright light that comes into my place. With the Cissus Discolor, they do prefer a little bit more on the medium to bright light. However, you have to be extremely careful not exposing this plant to any direct sunlight, even morning sunlight for even a couple hours. And that's because their leaves and their vines are extremely delicate and fragile, that any sunlight that hits them will cause the leaves to burn, and you don't want burning leaves because they will never repair itself. So you just gotta be mindful that although they prefer bright light, make sure that you do not give them any direct sunlight. I actually have mine on top of this bookshelf, which is about like 5 feet away from my window. However, during the summer months, I might actually need to move this back because it does get a bit of direct sunlight in this location, in this area, even during the winter if it's a nice sunny day. So I just gotta be mindful of it. Now, when it comes to watering your Cissus Discolor, and I actually learned this pretty quickly, my rule of thumb usually with most of my houseplants is I allow the soil to completely dry between waterings. However, this plant does not like it when you allow that soil to dry. They will tell you pretty quickly, you know, when it's happening. So you just gotta be mindful of that. Typically what I'll do when I do water this guy is I touch the first inch of the soil just to see if it's more on the drier side or on the wet side. If it's more on the drier side and the pot is light, then I'll give it a good drink, allowing that water to drain through still, because you still don't want any water sitting near the roots because that will still cause root rot. So you just gotta be mindful of that. However, if you do leave this in dry soil for long periods of time, they will not bounce back. They aren't as forgiving when it comes to underwatering like a pothos would be. It may take a while for you to get the hang of how to water this plant, especially if you don't have any plants that has a similar kind of watering needs like a Maranta or a Calathea, where they prefer their soil to be more on the moist side. So yeah, but other than that, it's fairly easy to care for. Now, I don't think you need to repot this plant often. I would say maybe like every 2 years at best. And the reason for it is because I found the roots, especially when I did the cutting, the roots to be a little bit more thinner and more thread-like, unlike the roots of like say a pothos or a monstera. The roots are a little bit more thicker, so they do require a bit more of a bigger pot because they just, you know, consume that entire pot. However, this is in a 6-inch container, and there's maybe about, you know, like 5 like mother vines in here, but I know the roots aren't as thick, so I don't think this needs to be repotted anytime soon. If you do decide to repot this plant, the potting mixture to definitely use is something of high in nutrients, but also well draining at the same time. So I would probably mix 50% of it using regular potting mix, and then maybe 10% peat moss. Peat moss will add an extra nutrients as well as help retain that moisture, which this plant kind of needs as it's growing. And then maybe the rest of it, like 40% would be perlite or pumice, which will help with that drainage when you are watering this plant. So again, it allows that water to drain through, but the regular potting mix and peat moss will help kind of retain a bit of that moisture. So that would be kind of my go-to potting mix when it comes to your Cissus Discolor. Now I'm gonna show you guys how to propagate this houseplant, and it is a vining plant, which for me, whenever it comes to vining plants and how to propagate for them, I prefer to use the cutting and water method, which is what I'm gonna show you guys. And I already have a few here propagating a couple of weeks ago that I decided to cut and experiment with. So we're gonna show you guys how to go about it. Now, some people have used certain methods like a prop box, which by the way, I did do a video on how to propagate your plants using both the cuttings and water method as well as a propagation box. So I'll link it in the description below or in the card up here, and you guys can check that out after. But I did show an example of how to propagate the Cissus Discolor there. So what I usually will do is take a vine. And normally you want to take like a vine that's a little bit more, you know, mature and not necessarily like a younger vine. But however, you guys know the vines, the closer they are to the ends, those are usually more of the juvenile growth. But so I'm going to take this long one. Actually, no. Let's take, yeah, you know what? Let's take this long one. I'm just going to take one right here. Okay. So there, I snip the vine. And the key to any vining plants, well, the key to Cissus Discolor, pothos probably doesn't matter as much because they just do really well when it comes to propagating in water, is you don't want to make your cuttings too long. So for example, if I was to just place this, you know, if I was to just remove a few of the bottom leaves to create the node and place this in the jar, which I have tried, what will happen is this will not root well, this will start withering away and it will eventually die. The key is to make sure that your cuttings are short. So what I usually like to do is maybe have about like 2 or 1 leaves. So for example, here's our vine. I'm gonna just place it down here. I'm gonna cut right here. So there's one cutting right there that has 2 leaves. And here's another one right here. So I'm gonna cut this right there. There's another cutting. So that has 2 leaves. Here's another one. 3. Okay, see again, 2 leaves right there. So do that around throughout your entire vine, and then what you want to do next, make sure these guys are still facing up. So what you want to do next is, for example, this already has a leaf right here. You guys see? It kind of just fell off, so that's your node. That's what's going to go submerge in water like this. Okay, and then with this one, again, you have kind of like 2 leaves. One will be the node, so you want to just cut that off. Maybe cut the ends there and then place this in your jar just like that. Similar to this guy as well too. Again, you want to just cut that bottom leaf out, and then that way the node is exposed and that can go nicely in the jar. I'm gonna make one more right here. Sometimes I forget which side it is. Yeah, this one right here. Okay. Again, simple as that. Now, what I actually found with the Cissus Discolor is they root pretty fast, like faster than a pothos. And I thought pothos was the fastest way to kind of propagate your houseplant using the cutting and water method. So what you want to do next is place this in an area that has warm temperatures and a lot of bright indirect light. Again, indirect light because the leaves will still burn. And within a few days or even a week or so, you'll definitely see some roots starting to grow. Now, when do you transfer that plant into soil? It really depends on how well that root system has established. So I do have a few of these cuttings already that has been rooting. I'm just gonna take them out so that way I can show you guys. And you guys can see right there, see how thin these roots are? They're more like thread-like roots, unlike a pothos roots or a syndapsis. So this is what I mean, how the roots are a little bit more thinner and they can consume, you know, a larger or smaller size pot and still be okay and not need to be repotted. So what you wanna do is, you know, I usually wait till about the roots are about maybe 2 to 3 inches long before I transplant them into soil medium. However, with roots like this that are a little bit more threaded, I probably would move it more towards like a sphagnum moss potting. So that way it can still continue to grow and develop the roots and not just have the roots grow in water for long periods of time. And the reason for it is because roots that grow in water is slightly different than the roots that grow in a potting mixture. And it's just the way kind of the plant works and how it naturally kind of gravitates towards the soil structure and the nutrients that's in there. So when it comes to these types of plants, I actually like to develop them a bit more. So what I'll do is I'll actually pot them in sphagnum moss, and I'm just gonna, I did one right here right now. So these were my cuttings. I'm just gonna take it out so that way I can show you guys how I did this. So you guys can see here, look at, these roots are beautiful. Wow. You guys see right there, look how beautiful those roots are. So what I want to do is, instead of leaving these guys in water, because this was already in water just like yesterday, and then I decided to pot it in this sphagnum moss, because I do want the roots to continue to develop while still having that structure, like a potting medium with the sphagnum moss. However, the sphagnum moss has a lot of air pockets within it, so it doesn't allow it to kind of root rot when you are watering this plant. So really, really good kind of in between, you know, the water to the soil structure. So I'm actually gonna plant these two in here as well. So that way we have a nice couple vines here that's gonna grow well. And again, normally you just wanna get some nice wet sphagnum moss, not soaking, but just like nice and wet, and then just cover it up. And usually the way I water this one is whenever the top, you know, layer of the sphagnum moss is starting to dry out, then I'll give it a nice drink. And again, because there's so many air pockets in the sphagnum moss, and you know, it doesn't like have any sitting water in there. It gets a lot of oxygen still, so it doesn't rot the roots, and it'll grow really, really nice. And I'm really starting to like a lot of lately I've been really liking sphagnum moss as kind of a potting medium, especially in between like the stage of growing the roots in water or propagation box, and then moving them into their own container with sphagnum moss, and then eventually into a potting medium or mixture. So this is our new baby Cissus Discolor. Really excited about this, and I can't wait for it to grow. Now, what I am actually planning to do is planting this back up to the mother plant, because like I said, there's only about like maybe 4 vines in here or 5, and I want to get this a little bit more full at the top, and really like my goal is to get that backdrop on my floating shelf covered in Cissus Discolor, and then draping over that shelf, and then having a nice kind of backdrop with the trellis. So that's the goal. But yeah, fairly easy on how to care and propagate your Cissus Discolor. We're gonna move over to the next plant. It is the silver dollar vine. I'm just gonna clean up here, and then we'll get to it. All right, guys, so the next plant I wanna talk about is Ciceraciosis danguyi, AKA silver dollar vine, AKA penny plant, AKA coin plant, or be some other name. What's in a name? That which you call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So penny plant would, were he not penny plant called? I'm just kidding. Comment below and let me know where you think that was from. But yes, this is my silver dollar vine. I've had it for a couple years, and they're known to have these circular thick leaves that has silver green colors to it. Their stems are a little bit more cylindrical as well, kind of has a woodier feel. And they do come from Madagascar, so you can imagine the type of growing conditions that these guys prefer. A lot of bright light, even full sun exposure. However, I do have mine in an indirect filtered light, maybe getting a couple hours of direct sunlight in the mornings and late afternoons. And it is a vining succulent plant, so typically when it comes to watering these plants, I allow that soil to go completely dry in between waterings, and even waiting a few more days before I decide to water this plant. Sometimes I like to feel the leaves to see if they're still firm or if they're starting to feel soft and the pot is dry. That's when I'll give it a really, really good drink, making sure that water drains through, and then placing it back in its location. Really, really easy plant to care for. Now, when it comes to repotting your plant, I actually probably wouldn't recommend to repot this every year, partly because I found that mine grows a little bit slower. I actually have had this guy in the same container for about 2 years, and this year alone it gave me this beautiful vine that you guys see, plus these 2 small ones that grew at the top. Prior to that, I only had this vine, and maybe another piece here that I did cut. So it did surprise me when it grew this much this summer, partly because I allowed it to really, get a lot of that bright light. And I think they do prefer to be a little bit more snug in their containers. So that's one of the reasons why I don't recommend repotting this every year. Now, I definitely might need to repot this by next year. It'll be its 3rd year. So if you do decide to repot this because it is a succulent plant, a regular, potting mix of cacti or succulent with some more perlite or pumice will be fine. You don't need to get fancy with this. But again, a really cool looking plant, very unique. And on top of that, really easy to care for. So now we're gonna do a bit of propagation with the silver dollar vine. And the first time I tried propagating this, I actually tried to use the cutting and water method because, I thought it's a vining plant. It should probably, work as well. Now, so what I did is I took a vine, I just cut pretty much here, and then I cut it into 2 pieces, then I placed it in water. However, it wasn't rooting and it was taking a very, very long time. Unlike, say, for example, a Ficus benjamina, even though it has kind of a woodier stem, that one rooted really well. But with the silver dollar vine, it wasn't rooting. The plant was still alive, it just wasn't rooting. So what I decided to do is take that cutting out of the water. I allowed it to callus for about maybe 30 minutes. And then I just planted it in soil. So I have one actually planted here with the mother plant. It's this baby one, if you guys can see. Right there. And then I took the other cutting and planted it in its own soil. So what I did is obviously care for it like I normally would care, you know, the mother plant, allow that soil to dry out completely and then water it really well. And what I'll even sometimes do is I actually even will spray the top soil just to kind of keep that top layer a bit more moist, so that way it kind of helps develop that root. But you know, in a few weeks or so, I tried pulling this guy out of the soil and I found, if you guys can see right there, there's baby roots. So really, really cool how this kind of worked. I was surprised that it rooted really well in soil. I usually don't like to do soil propagation because I always worry about risking losing them into root rot, but with this one, because it is a succulent vining plant, they retain a bit of the moisture on their leaves, and you know, just as long as you kind of keep that soil dry, but also, you know, not allow it to be sitting in dry soil for long periods of time like a mother plant, that you can leave for long periods of time. This one, if it's a cutting, I would definitely recommend as soon as the soil dries out, then you want to make sure you give it a nice good drink. But we're definitely going to do one right now. So I decided to actually cut this. I wasn't sure if I want to cut it, but we're gonna cut this guy because I want to cut it to maybe about here, and you guys see this little piece right here where the new growth is. We actually want to turn this into like a new mother plant and then kind of create like a tree shape silver dollar vine. So that's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna cut this guy right about here. Do that right now. So again, take a sharp, clean scissors, and I'm gonna cut it really close right here. There we go. So we got this cutting now, and what I'm gonna do is I'm actually just gonna leave this bottom leaf because again, the roots will grow at the end of this, not necessarily at the nodes. So you don't need to actually remove a leaf to kind of expose a node or whatnot. But leave this for about 30 minutes, wait for it to callus, and then you can plant this back up. Again, the potting mix I'm gonna use, and I'm gonna pot in a small container because those roots aren't necessarily as big, is I'm gonna use just a cacti soil with some perlite in here. There's a bit of cocoa husk that I added in here, but yeah, so that's what I'm gonna use. So again, once this kind of callus a bit, just plant it in there and place it in an area that gets a lot of bright indirect light, and then yeah, just give it a nice good drink and water, and it should be fine from there. So again, very, very easy on how to care and propagate your silver dollar vine, as well as your Cissus discolor. Both of these plants are extremely unique in the way they're structured, and they're so cool to have in your collection. And on top of that, they're really easy to care for. So other than that, hopefully you guys learned something or two from this video. If you are looking for additional information on the silver dollar vine or the Cissus discolor, definitely check out my website. I do have a lot more information there, as well as information on other houseplants that you may be interested in, crazyplantguy.com. Other than that, comment below and let me know if you have any of these plants or you plan on getting it the next time you do some plant shopping. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you guys soon. Peace.